Carl Jung once wrote that every form of addiction is bad, no matter whether the narcotic be alcohol or morphine or idealism. At first glance, that quote might seem off-topic when you're trying to figure out your place in life, but think about it. We can easily become addicted to the roles we assume or the labels others give us. We slip into predictable patterns. Maybe we're always the caretaker, the problem solver, the entertainer, and we rarely pause to ask, is this who I truly am, or is it just a mask? Yet Jung's work on psychological types suggests that beneath these surface roles, there's a deeper structure of the psyche waiting to be discovered. Welcome, everyone. Today, we're going to unravel one of the most fascinating concepts in Jungian psychology: how knowing your psychological type might just reveal the unique life role you've been designed to fill. Before we dive in, take a moment to subscribe if you haven't already. We explore the depths of human psychology on this channel, and your support helps keep these explorations going. We often think of personality tests as trendy conversation starters, something to joke about at parties or to share on social media. Yet behind these modern versions lies Jung's groundbreaking insight into why we perceive, judge, and interact with the world in distinctly different ways. If you've ever felt misunderstood because your thought process stands out in your family, or if you constantly feel that your career choices conflict with your deep inner values, you might be carrying an unrecognized psychological blueprint within. And it's not about labeling you as just an introvert or the creative type. It's about understanding the subtle dance between consciousness and unconscious influences that drive your decisions. Does this hidden blueprint point you toward a specific destiny? Or is it more fluid, like a set of guiding principles that help you adapt to life's changing landscapes? Jung believed that by understanding our psychological preferences, how we gather information, make judgments, and derive energy, we could better navigate our personal paths toward wholeness. So here's the big question for you. Are you living your true role, or are you living someone else's dream? Let's journey together through the stages of Jung's psychological types, see how these preferences unfold in everyday life, and discover how they might light the way to our individual life missions. If you're ready for a thought-provoking exploration into why you keep bumping into the same patterns and what that says about your deeper purpose, stay with me. Let's begin the journey. As we embark on this path, remember, this isn't about confining you to a box marked introvert or extrovert, nor is it a simplistic label that dictates your destiny. Instead, think of Jung's typology as a compass guiding you toward your authentic self. By the end of this video, you'll see how your psychological type can empower you with a sense of direction you may not have even realized you were missing. And who knows, maybe you'll discover that stepping into your true role is more liberating than you ever imagined. Now let's dive deeper. Picture yourself as a traveler setting out with a map. According to Carl Jung, the psyche consists of various landmarks: consciousness, the personal unconscious, and the collective unconscious, each influencing how we behave and who we become. But we don't travel blindly. We each carry a certain compass, our psychological type. At its most basic level, this compass reveals whether we draw our energy primarily from within, introversion, or from the external world, extroversion. It also shows how we process information through sensing, focusing on concrete details, or intuition, leaning toward abstract patterns, and how we tend to make decisions through thinking, logical analysis, or feeling, values-based consideration. Later expansions of Jung's theory add a layer of judging or perceiving, creating the more familiar 16 types many of us know. But at its core, Jung's original insight was that we're not all wired the same way, and that difference is a strength when we learn to understand and integrate it. We see this right away in everyday life. Imagine two friends planning a weekend getaway. One friend meticulously checks the weather forecast, lodging details and travel times, ensuring everything is accounted for. That's a classic sensing approach, dealing in concrete details, anchoring decisions in real-world data. The other friend jumps in excitedly with visions of epic sunsets, hidden waterfalls, and random road trip adventures. That friend is likely guided more by intuition, enthralled by possibilities and overarching themes. What's remarkable is that both travelers bring something essential to the journey: Without the practical sensing friend, they might forget to pack enough food. Without the imaginative, intuitive friend, the trip might lack spontaneity and creative spark. This is the fundamental synergy Jung pointed to. Once you learn your own orientation, you start realizing how it shapes your interactions, decisions, even the careers or relationships you're drawn to. Now, here's your first reflection point. Think about a time when you planned something significant, maybe a vacation, a social event, or even a major life decision like changing jobs. Which approach did you naturally gravitate toward? Did you rely heavily on concrete facts or follow a gut feeling about the potential outcome? That single decision-making moment can reveal the compass direction you unconsciously favor. Becoming aware of that preference can be a revelation. Suddenly, you see how certain choices feel energizing while others seem draining. It's not because you're bad at one method, it's that you have a more natural affinity for a particular orientation. That alone can be a huge aha moment. Consider how this plays out at work. A 32-year-old woman named Alicia, for instance, found herself repeatedly taking jobs that required tons of detail-oriented tasks. She was good at them, but each role felt stifling, and she couldn't understand why she always felt exhausted. Eventually, she discovered she was a strongly intuitive type who thrived on big ideas and problem-solving. Handling endless spreadsheets dulled her energy. After acknowledging her preference, she transitioned into a strategic planning role in her company. Suddenly, she felt alive, engaged, and was even praised for her visionary thinking. Knowing her type wasn't about limiting her, it was about aligning her strengths with her responsibilities. That's the heart of how psychological typing can set you on the right path. Now, introversion versus extroversion is another crucial piece of the map. Society often glorifies extroversion, big group parties, networking events, leading loud presentations. Yet many brilliant artists, writers, scientists, and executives are introverts who excel precisely because they reflect deeply before taking action. Another real-world example is Marcus, an introverted college student who felt pressured to mimic the vibrant, outgoing personalities he saw on social media. But all it did was drain him. After exploring Jungian ideas, Marcus realized it was okay, actually beneficial, for him to spend time alone, recharging, and developing his ideas. When he gave himself permission to honor his introversion, he found he could show up more authentically in social situations and build deeper, more meaningful connections. One day, a professor noticed his thoughtful nature and invited him to collaborate on a research project, which Marcus loved. The hidden power of discovering your type is that it validates your natural inclinations, freeing you to contribute where you're most effective, rather than forcing yourself into a mismatched mold. We come to yet another dimension, decision-making based on thinking or feeling. Jung never said one is better than the other. It's more about how we navigate choices. If you're primarily a thinking type, you might weigh pros and cons meticulously, focusing on fairness and logic. If you lead with feeling, you might prioritize harmony, relationships, and values. Imagine a coworker conflict. A thinking dominant individual might outline the objective facts, aiming for a just resolution. A feeling dominant person might want to first address emotional wounds and ensure everyone feels respected. Both methods can solve the conflict, but in different ways. Here is a critical reflection point for you. Do you ever find yourself in disagreements because you prioritize data while someone else prioritizes relationships, or vice versa? Recognizing these core differences can instantly dissolve tension. It's not that the other person is being irrational or insensitive. It might be that you're both using different internal compasses to arrive at decisions. If you can integrate both perspectives, you can forge stronger connections and more balanced outcomes. Midway through our journey, let me pause to say, if you're finding this exploration helpful, feel free to hit the like button. It helps more curious minds discover these insights, and it also signals to us that we're on the right track with the content we're sharing. Now let's keep going and venture deeper into what psychological types can mean for your personal evolution. Jung saw growth, what he called individuation, as the process of expanding our conscious awareness to include those aspects of ourselves we've ignored or repressed. And ironically, our greatest growth often involves embracing the opposite side of our type. For instance, if you've spent most of your life focusing on logic and reason, thinking, you might find a new wellspring of creativity and empathy by engaging your feeling function. Or if you're a passionate extrovert, you might find more depth and peace by developing your introverted side, learning to reflect quietly and trust your internal hunches. This is not about changing who you are. It's more like broadening your skill set so you can navigate life's terrain with greater versatility. One powerful metaphor is to see your psychological type like a home base. It's your comfort zone where you naturally excel. But every quest involves leaving home and discovering new lands, right? The tension you feel when encountering people of opposite types is almost like traveling in a foreign country. Initially, it might be challenging or uncomfortable, but eventually it can enrich you beyond measure. This is also where relationships become incredibly potent mirrors. An extrovert might fall in love with an introvert and struggle to find common ground. Over time, though, each realizes the other's approach to life has something valuable to offer. That conflict becomes an opportunity for growth, a shared journey of bridging differences. Take, for example, a couple, Elizabeth, dominant feeling, and Tom, dominant thinking. Elizabeth felt Tom was cold and unfeeling whenever they had important discussions, while Tom perceived Elizabeth as overly emotional and irrational. After learning about their different type preferences, they began to appreciate each other's strengths. Elizabeth recognized that Tom's logic was crucial for grounding their decisions in reality, whereas Tom began to see Elizabeth's emotional perspective as the heartbeat that sustained their relationship. This led to a profound transformation in their communication. Instead of labeling each other as too emotional or too detached, they saw themselves as balancing forces, each bringing a valuable lens to the conversation. Their shared journey improved not only their relationship, but also their own personal development. Now let's talk about how this ties into discovering your true life role. Jung believed we each have a unique calling or vocation, something that resonates with the deepest layers of our psyche. But we often miss that call because we're stuck imitating others. Psychological types gives us a blueprint for understanding where our natural gifts lie. Maybe you're an intuitive feeling type who's drawn to counseling or healing professions because you sense unspoken needs and empathize easily. Perhaps you're a sensing thinking type who thrives in roles requiring precision, like engineering or logistics. These aren't stereotypes, they're starting points. The real magic happens when you integrate your inclinations with passion and purpose, forging a path that aligns with who you genuinely are. For a moment, imagine your mind as a multi-room house. Each room represents a different function: sensing, intuition, thinking, feeling, and the hallway connecting them represents your level of self-awareness. Most of us hang out comfortably in just one or two rooms. Yet the journey to a fulfilling life role might involve exploring the entire house. One day you might discover a dusty attic labeled unexplored creativity or a locked basement labeled hidden empathy. As you unlock these spaces, you not only gain versatility but also start to feel a deeper sense of wholeness. That's the core transformation possibility, moving from a narrow default expression of self to a more expansive, integrated version of who you could be. So how do you put these insights into practice? First, consider taking a reputable assessment or reading Jung's original work on psychological types. Reflect on which function, sensing, intuition, thinking, feeling, you tend to lead with and whether you recharge more through introversion or extroversion. Notice your dominant style at work, with friends, or while making decisions. Second, pay attention to recurring life themes. Ask yourself, which patterns keep repeating for me? Do I often find myself drawn to certain challenges or people with complementary traits? These observations can illuminate your natural role in group dynamics. Are you typically the visionary, the nurturer, the critical thinker, or the organizer? Third, consciously practice your opposite. If you lean heavily on logic, experiment with giving emotions more room. If you're a big-picture thinker, challenge yourself to focus on the nitty-gritty details for a project. It can feel uncomfortable at first, like learning a new language. But over time, you'll gain a remarkable flexibility in how you approach problems. And you'll likely discover talents you never knew you had, which can open doors to unexpected career paths, hobbies, or relationships. This fosters a sense of continuous growth, something Jung described as essential to living a meaningful life. Here's a second metaphor that might resonate with you. Think of your psyche as a garden with four distinct areas, each corresponding to the main functions. One area might be blooming, while another is neglected and overrun with weeds. Tending to the neglected areas won't strip the thriving one of its glory. Instead, you get a richer, more balanced garden overall. As you cultivate each part, you create a personal ecosystem teeming with possibilities, and that diversity of psychological resources can help you adapt to life's unpredictable changes. In a world that's constantly evolving through technology, social norms, economic shifts, having a robust inner garden ensures you can pivot without losing your core identity. Now, if you're wondering how all this can directly impact your future, think about the next major decision in your life: a career move, starting a family, going back to school, or launching a passion project. When you're self-aware about your type, you're more likely to choose wisely and less likely to look back with regret. You also develop empathy for people who approach life differently. Once you see that people aren't being difficult on purpose but are simply tuned into another psychological channel, conflicts can transform into opportunities for creative solutions. That shift in perspective is an aha moment many of us desperately need, whether in the workplace, friendships, or romantic partnerships. Let's integrate some practical examples of how you might apply this. One application is in team settings at work. If you know your team is heavily sensing and you're the lone intuitive, step forward as the person who can envision the big picture strategy. Conversely, if the team is brimming with intuitives floating ideas, you can ground the conversation by bringing in data and steps if you're a sensing type. Another application is personal well-being. Introverts might need scheduled alone time to recharge, while extroverts might arrange regular social activities or brainstorming sessions. A final application is in conflict resolution. If you're a thinking type, try to articulate the emotional elements involved. If you're a feeling type, show how a decision can also make logical sense. By weaving these conscious strategies into your daily life, you'll start to notice a remarkable improvement in how you relate to yourself and others. Yes, it's work. It's easier to revert to our default modes, especially under stress or fatigue. But think of stress as an opportunity to expand your skill set. The next time a problem hits, ask yourself, which function or orientation might I be neglecting right now? Maybe your finances are in disarray because you're so busy dreaming up future possibilities that you aren't tending to current responsibilities, a classic intuitive pitfall. Or you might be stuck in a rut, so hyper-focused on facts that you miss out on the imaginative spark that could solve your dilemma, a common sensing pitfall. By consciously toggling to the neglected function, you might discover an elegant solution that was always within you, just waiting to be activated. Another reflection point: have you ever experienced a tension between your public persona and your private self? Perhaps you're an extrovert at work, managing teams and networking, but you feel more contemplative when you're alone, reading or journaling. Or vice versa. This discrepancy can feel like an identity conflict until you realize that both sides are part of you. One might be more natural, and the other is a skill you've developed out of necessity. That's where Jung's concept of individuation becomes deeply personal. You begin to see that it's not about choosing one side, but integrating your various facets into a coherent sense of self. The more you acknowledge these different aspects, the closer you get to understanding your true life role. Which brings us to the journey's overarching question: does psychological typing actually reveal your life role? It can, if you view it not as a rigid label, but as a dynamic guide. Think of it like a well-annotated map that shows possible routes, major crossroads, and scenic overlooks. You still have to walk the path, make choices, and take detours when necessary. But the map ensures you won't wander aimlessly or spend decades following someone else's directions. By highlighting your strengths and weaknesses, your passions and blind spots, it illuminates the unique contribution you can make to the world. As we near the end of this exploration, let's gather the insights we've discovered. Jung's concept of psychological types teaches us that individual differences aren't obstacles. They're part of the tapestry of human experience. By understanding whether we're energized internally or externally, how we gather information, And how we make decisions? We gain clarity on who we naturally are. In relationships, this awareness can end needless conflicts. In careers, it can open doors to roles that feel not just tolerable, but truly right. And in personal growth, it sets us on the path of individuation, encouraging us to embrace both our strengths and shadow aspects. So how can you apply this wisdom right now? First, do a type exploration, whether through Jung's original writings, a trusted assessment, or simple self-reflection. Notice patterns and keep a journal. Then challenge yourself to practice your less preferred function in small, manageable steps. If you're typically a big planner, leave one afternoon open for spontaneous decisions. If you tend to dive into new ventures without a roadmap, try meticulously planning one aspect of your next project. This doesn't mean forsaking your core strengths. It's about expanding your toolkit. In the process, watch for any unexpected sparks of interest or satisfaction that might signal a hidden passion. That hidden passion is often a clue to your next step in life. Finally, invite other people into this journey. Ask close friends or loved ones if they've noticed patterns in your behavior that you might be overlooking. Their feedback can serve as valuable milestones on your map, guiding you to see corners of your psyche you hadn't examined. And as always, building a supportive community around self-discovery can fuel your motivation. Now let's wrap up with a brief summary of our journey, some direct guidance for application, and an invitation to stay connected. First, the summary. You've just learned that Jung's psychological types act like a compass guiding you through the terrain of your inner life. By identifying your preferences for how you interact with the world and make decisions, you gain deeper self-awareness and empathy for others. This opens the door to more fulfilling roles, whether in your personal relationships or professional life, because you'll be operating from a place of authenticity rather than forced conformity. For a moment, think about what that authenticity could mean for you. Could it mean finally feeling confident that your thoughtful approach is valuable, even if it's quieter than others? Could it mean embracing your creative spark without worrying you're too out there? Or maybe it means stepping into leadership positions with boldness. Now that you understand you're an extrovert who thrives on public collaboration, one practical step you could take as soon as you finish watching is to list 5 tasks or environments where you feel most energized and alive, and 5 where you feel most drained. Look for patterns that point to your type. Then consider one small action that aligns with your energizing zone. Start weaving more of that zone into your daily life. Next, for application guidance, try having a conversation with someone about their type. You'll be amazed at how even a short discussion can reveal surprising insights. If you run a small team, consider using a type-based approach for delegating tasks, ensuring you match each individual's strengths to the right project. Or, if you're navigating a personal conflict, pause and think about whether the other person might be using a different decision-making function. Approach them from that angle and see how it changes the dynamic. These small but deliberate steps can produce profound shifts in how you experience your life and role. And finally, a note on community. We grow best when we don't grow alone. If you enjoyed this exploration, I invite you to subscribe and join the conversation in the comments section. Share your type if you know it, or mention an aspect of Jung's theory that resonates with you. You'll find others who can relate, and together we can build a supportive network for understanding ourselves more deeply. Consider sharing this video with someone you think might benefit. Maybe that friend who always wonders why they can't choose a career path, or the coworker who feels perpetually misunderstood in team meetings. Sharing insights often cements your own understanding and sparks new realizations for others. Thank you for journeying with me through the fascinating realm of Carl Jung's psychological types. May the compass of your inner life guide you toward a path of fulfillment, growth, and the unique role only you can play. Your psyche is rich with hidden treasures waiting to be discovered. Embrace them wholeheartedly, and you might just find that what you've been searching for, your true life role, has been within you all along. Until next time, take care and keep exploring.